"Am I worth saving?" she asked. The drifter gave one final answer. The desert wind carried no mercy that evening. Heat still pressed from the earth even as the sun bled itself dry over the horizon. A single figure moved through the gulch. Boots, dragging, hat brim low. Just another drifter with no name worth remembering. But what he stumbled upon that night would carve itself into memory like a scar. She was tied to a mesquite post, wrists rubbed raw, hair matted with dust and sweat. Her dress was torn, throat hoarse, but her eyes burned steady. Branding iron marks still smoked faintly on her shoulder, cruel and deliberate. Whoever had left her there hadn't meant for her to live. The drifter crouched, knife flashing once. In the fading light, why'd they do this, he asked, though he already knew. The West only punished what it feared, or what it wanted to break. Her lips trembled. Then came the words that stopped him colder than the desert night. Am I worth saving? For a moment he didn't breathe. A vulture wheeled above, wings scraping the sky. Somewhere in the gulch's edge, stones rattled, the kind of sound a man makes when he doesn't want to be seen. He looked at the smoking brand again. Whoever marked her would come back to finish the work. The drifter cut her bonds, slow and deliberate. Her arms fell like broken wings, but she held his gaze. I ain't a man for noble causes, he muttered, but I ain't a man for leaving folk to die neither. He steadied her to her feet. Her knees buckled and he caught her, dust and blood smearing his coat. The air carried the faintest trace of hoofbeats. Friend or foe? Salvation or a crueler fate? The drifter pulled her close. We need to move, now. And so beneath that crimson sky, with death circling overhead, he made a choice that would hunt him through every mile of desert yet to come. The night swallowed them whole. The drifter led her through the gulch, each step heavy with silence except for the creak of his boots and her ragged breath. She leaned on him, half stumbling, half carried, yet her will to keep moving burned stronger. Then her body allowed. At dawn, the horizon cracked open with light. Heat shimmered early, promising another day of torment. They found a dry creek bed, its stones hot as iron, and followed it toward the bones of a town that looked half dead itself, shutters sagging, signs swinging on rusted nails. Once, it had been called Ash's Crossing. Now it was nothing more than dust and whispers. He lowered her near a rain barrel outside a boarded saloon. The water was stale, but it kept her lips from splitting. She drank slow, eyes never leaving his face. Why you helpin' me? She rasped. The drifter didn't answer. Instead, he studied the sand behind them. Fresh boot tracks cut across, their trail, sharp-edged, new. Someone was following. Who are they? He asked, his tone low. Her hand moved to the branded mark on her shoulder. She shuddered, then looked away. Men who own more than cattle. Men who buy and sell folk like me. The drifter cursed under his breath. He had seen their kind before, ranch barons with no law but their own. And once a man tangled with them, blood was the only payment left. They slipped into the church at the edge of town, its doors hanging by rusted hinges. Inside, dust floated in thin shafts of light, pews broken, Bible pages scattered by the wind. He laid her down on the altars, stepped and passed her a strip of jerky from his pack. She ate in silence, every bite a struggle. The drifter's eyes never stopped scanning the windows. He caught the gleam of sunlight off iron, far down the street. A rifle. Then it vanished. By cutting her free, he had lit a fuse. And now, in this dying town, the fire was racing closer. Out here in the Wild West, every step carried a price, some paid in blood, some in loyalty. And if this tale has kept your heart pounding, don't let it ride past you. Saddle up with us by hitting that subscribe button, because the next twist may change everything. The church smelled of rot and smoke, but it was shelter. He set his canteen between them and struck a match, the flame trembling against cracked walls. She sat upright, stubborn despite the tremor in her hands, and for the first time, he saw her not as a victim but as a woman clinging to dignity on the edge of ruin. What do they call you? He asked, her eyes flicked up. Rosa. The name clung to the air like a prayer. He nodded once. Elias. He hadn't spoken his name aloud in months. Names carried weight, And in his case, debts. Rosa tilted her head. I've heard of an Elias, a man who once rode with the Granger gang. Is that you? The silence stretched, broken only by the pop of the match burning down. He didn't answer, but the set of his jaw said enough. Her breath caught. Then you already know what it is to be hunted. Before he could reply, boots scraped against the church door. A shadow cut across the broken light. Elias grabbed Rosa's wrist, pulling her down behind a splintered pew just as the door groaned open. Two men stepped in, spurs clinking, rifles slung low. Their voices carried that lazy cruelty of hired hands. Tracks end here, one muttered. Reckon the boss'll pay double if we bring her back alive. Elias's grip tightened around his revolver. Rosa's eyes widened, the question unspoken. Would he risk himself for her now that the price was clear? The men prowled forward, boots echoing. Dust swirled in the glow. Elias rose from cover with the speed of a rattlesnake, revolver barking once. The first man dropped, rifle clattering against stone. The second staggered, curses swallowed by another shot. Silence returned, broken only by Rosa's ragged breathing. Elias holstered the weapon, jaw tight. Killing brought the past back like smoke in his lungs. He knelt beside her. They'll keep coming. Men like this don't stop. Rosa's hand found his sleeve. Then why save me? He looked away, past the broken altar, out toward the dying street. Because in her eyes he'd seen something he thought long buried. The chance to be more than the sins that chased him. By dusk the sky turned copper, the kind that promised violence. Elias led Rosa out the back of the church, slipping through alleyways where weeds pushed through cracks. The town breathed like a dying animal, doors barred, windows shuttered, as though its people knew trouble was about to arrive. And it did. Riders came, 6 of them, their silhouettes black against the setting sun, rifles slung, faces hidden beneath broad hats. They stopped at the main street's edge, and their leader raised a hand. The horses pawed the dirt restlessly, waiting for the order. Elias pulled Rosa behind the husk of a general store. His hand rested on his Colt, thumb easing the hammer. They'll smell fear, he muttered. Best we give 'em something else to chew on. She nodded, though her body trembled. Her courage was not in steel, but in refusing to collapse. The rider spread wide, boots hitting the ground heavy. One called out, voice sharp. We know she's here. Hand her over, Elias. You don't want old debts dug up, not tonight. Rosa's gaze snapped toward him. They know you, she whispered. He didn't deny it. The Granger name had bought him enemies, and his hands were stained with more than dust. But this wasn't about debts anymore. It was about the promise he'd made when he cut her free. Gunfire cracked, the first shot splintering a store sign inches from Elias's head. He dragged Rosa low, returning fire with a quick squeeze of the trigger. One rider fell, horse bolting in panic. The rest answered with lead and fury. Behind the tumbleweed-strewn trough, a boy crouched, barely 12, the same boy Elias had glimpsed outside the gulch. Wide eyes, thin chest rising shallow. Too scared to run, too curious to hide well. His presence tilted the odds. Elias cursed. Protecting Rosa was one thing, protecting them both was suicide. The street filled with smoke and thunder. Rosa clutched his arm, whispering over the chaos. If you leave me, you live. But Elias knew leaving wasn't an option. Not anymore. Each pull of his trigger wasn't just survival. It was defiance. A man trying to rewrite his fate in bullets and blood before sundown swallowed them whole. Night fell heavy over Ash's Crossing. The fight had driven them past the edge of town, toward the black silhouette of the old hanging tree. Its twisted branches had claimed more souls than the sheriff's jail ever could. Now, under its crooked shadow, Elias stood with Rosa behind him and the boy huddled low in the grass. The riders closed in, 3 left, their faces ghostly pale in moonlight. Their leader dismounted slow, boots crunching over dry earth. His voice carried the weight of command. You should have left her, Elias. She ain't worth the price you'll pay. Rosa stiffened. The words were salt in her wounds, the same. lie she had been branded with. She turned to Elias, eyes glistening. "Tell me now," she whispered, voice trembling but strong. "Am I worth saving?" The drifter's hand hovered over his Colt. Every mile of running, every ghost of his past, every chance he'd thrown away gathered in that moment. He looked at her, not at the brand, not at the scars, but at the fire she carried still. "You were worth it the second I cut those ropes," he said. His voice rang like iron struck clean. The leader snarled, drawing his revolver. The world slowed, wind sighing through dry branches, the boy's breath catching, Rosa's fingers clutching the hem of Elias's coat. Then thunder. Elias fired first, the shot cracking like judgment. The leader staggered back, mouth open in shock, and fell beneath the tree that had hung better men. The last two riders hesitated, eyes darting between vengeance and fear. Elias leveled his eye, revolver again, steady as stone. That was enough. They turned, spurred their horses, and vanished into the night. Silence settled. Only the creak of the tree rope and the hiss of Elias's labored breath remained. He lowered his gun, shoulders sagging. Rosa stepped forward, placing her hand over his. "You gave me an answer," she whispered. Elias looked down at her, then at the boy watching with wide eyes, and finally at the dark horizon stretching forever west. Maybe salvation wasn't for men like him, but for her, for both of them, he'd given the only answer that mattered. And as they walked away from the hanging tree, the desert wind carried his final words like a prayer. "Yes, you're worth saving." Beneath the hanging tree, Elias gave his final answer, and proved that even in a land ruled by dust and blood, a soul could still be worth saving. If this story stirred something in you, don't just ride on. Like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell, because out here in the Wild West, redemption may be rare, but it always finds its way.